My name is Maria Morrison, and I'm 31 years old. I was 14 when I started writing in that diary. A cheap blue notebook with a broken lock, the kind you buy from a dollar store because you think the tiny key makes your secrets safe. I filled it with everything I could never say out loud. Every fear. Every confession. Every single thing I had buried so deep inside myself that even I was afraid to read it back sometimes. That diary was the only place in the world where I was completely honest. And for 17 years, I thought it was gone. Lost in some move, or thrown away, or dissolved into the past like most things from childhood do. I was wrong. It was the summer reunion July, thick heat, the kind that makes everyone irritable and loud. My mother's side of the family gathered at Aunt Deborah's house every few years, and this particular one had nearly 40 people crammed into a backyard with 2 ceiling fans and a folding table full of potato salad. I had driven 4 hours to be there. I told myself it would be fine. I told myself I was an adult now, that the old wounds had healed, that my mother and I had reached some kind of quiet peace. I told myself a lot of things that summer that turned out to be completely wrong. My mother, Carol Morrison, was always the center of any room she entered. Not because people were drawn to her warmth, but because she had this particular talent for making everything a performance. She could turn a grocery run into theater, a school pickup into an audience moment. She never needed a stage because she treated every space like one. I had grown up as a supporting character in her show, always slightly off to the side, never quite the version of myself she wanted to present to the world. She stood up from her lawn chair around mid-afternoon, right when the kids had settled and the older uncles were half asleep. She had something in her hand. I didn't recognize it at first. The blue cover was faded, the corners bent and soft from age. Then I saw the broken lock dangling from the side and my stomach dropped completely through the ground. She had found it. Somehow, in some box from some move I hadn't been part of, she had found my diary. And she was smiling that particular smile, the one she wore when she knew something you didn't, when she had already decided how the next few minutes were going to go and she was simply waiting for you to catch up. I found something while cleaning out storage last month, she announced, loud enough for all 37 people to hear. Maria's teenage diary. She laughed, this light breezy laugh, and looked over at me with an expression I can only describe as fond mockery. I thought it would be fun to read a little. Listen to how dramatic she was. I was frozen. I couldn't speak. I couldn't stand up. I sat in that white plastic chair and felt 14 years old again, small and exposed and completely without armor. People were laughing softly, the comfortable laugh of a crowd that doesn't yet know whether something is funny or not, following her lead the way crowds always do. She opened to the first pages and read a few lines about a boy I had liked, about a fight with a friend, about feeling invisible at school. People chuckled. My face was on fire. I kept thinking, close it, please stop, but the words wouldn't come out. She was performing, and performing felt to her like breathing. She had no reason to stop. Then she turned to page 47. I knew exactly what was on page 47. I had written it on a Tuesday night in February, when I was 14 and desperate and had no other place to put what I was carrying. It wasn't about a boy or a fight or feeling invisible. It was about something that had happened to me. Something involving someone in our family. Something I had never told a single person out loud, not a friend, not a counselor. Not anyone, because I didn't have the language for it yet, and because I was terrified of what it would mean if I said it in the world instead of just on paper. My mother's voice stopped. Not slowed. Not quieted. Stopped. Mid-sentence completely. Like someone had reached over and switched off the sound. The backyard went from warm and buzzing to absolutely still in under 3 seconds. I looked up from my hands. Uncle Rob was standing. He hadn't said anything. He didn't look at my mother. He didn't look at me. He simply pushed his chair back from the table, stood up, and walked through the back door into the house. The screen door didn't even slam. It just whispered shut behind him. Nobody spoke for 11 seconds. I counted them. I don't know why I counted them. Maybe because my brain needed something to hold on to while the entire architecture of my family's history rearranged itself in real time around that folding table with the potato salad and the two ceiling fans. 11 seconds of 37 people understanding something without a single word being said. My mother closed the diary slowly. The performance was over. But the damage and the truth had only just begun. The 11 seconds ended when my cousin Becca's youngest dropped a plastic cup, and the sound cracked through the silence like a gunshot. People moved. Chairs shifted. Someone said something about getting more ice. The ordinary machinery of a family gathering lurched back into motion, because that is what people do when they encounter something too large to process. They reach for the nearest small thing and hold on to it for dear life. But nothing was ordinary anymore. Not for me. Not for anyone who had been sitting close enough to see my mother's face when she stopped reading. I got up from that white plastic chair and walked inside the house. My legs carried me through the kitchen, past the stacked paper plates and the open bags of chips, down the hallway, and into the small bathroom near the laundry room. I locked the door. I sat down on the edge of the tub. And for the first time in 17 years, I let myself feel the full weight of what I had written on page 47, not as a 14-year-old girl with nowhere to put her pain, but as a 31-year-old woman who had spent nearly 2 decades quietly carrying something that was never hers to carry. What I had written on that page was simple. A few sentences. The handwriting was messy because my hand had been shaking. I had described something Uncle Rob had done to me during a family visit when I was 12 years old, something that happened once, in a hallway, that lasted less than 2 minutes, but had lived inside me for 19 years. I had never told anyone because I had convinced myself that one time didn't count, that I must have misunderstood, that saying it out loud would destroy the family and the destruction would somehow be my fault. I was 12. I reasoned the way 12-year-olds do when adults have failed to make them feel safe enough to tell the truth. I sat in that bathroom for 20 minutes. Then someone knocked. It was my Aunt Deborah, my mother's older sister, a quiet woman who had always been kind to me in the understated way of people who notice more than they say. She didn't ask if I was okay. She simply said, through the door, "Rob left the property. His wife drove him. I think you should know that." Then she paused. "I also think you should know that you don't have to talk to anyone today if you don't want to. But when you're ready, I'm at the kitchen table." I opened the door. What followed was not a dramatic confrontation. There was no screaming, no public reckoning, no moment of cinematic justice. Real life rarely delivers those. What happened instead was quieter and in many ways harder. My mother came to find me in the kitchen, and for the first time in my memory, she looked genuinely undone. The performance was completely gone. She stood in the doorway holding that blue diary against her chest like she was trying to press it back into something she couldn't undo, and she said, "Maria, I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know what was in there." Her voice broke on the last word. I believed her. That was the complicated part. I actually believed her. She hadn't opened that diary to expose a trauma. She had opened it to laugh at her dramatic teenage daughter in front of an audience, which was cruel in its own particular way, but she had not known what she was going to find on page 47. The look on her face when she stopped reading had not been guilt. It had been shock. Pure, unprocessed shock. And watching her stand there, stripped of every bit of her usual performance, I felt something I had not expected to feel, something close to grief for both of us. For the mother she had not known how to be. For the daughter I had been, writing in secret, because I had no safer place to go. I reported what happened to the appropriate authorities 3 weeks after that reunion. I won't walk through every detail of that process, because it was long and painful and imperfect, the way these processes always are. What I will say is that I did it, and that doing it was the hardest and most necessary thing I have ever done. Uncle Rob was investigated. The case moved forward. I am not the only person who came forward, I was simply the first, which is often how these things go. Someone has to be first. I turned out to be the girl in the hallway who grew into the woman at the reunion who became the voice that opened the door for others. My relationship with my mother changed after that summer. It didn't become easy. I want to be honest about that because easy endings are not real endings, they are just places where stories stop before the hard part. We went to separate therapists. We had uncomfortable conversations. She had to sit with the fact that her daughter had been hurt inside the circle of her own family and had felt too unsafe to tell her. I had to sit with the fact that healing does not require me to minimize what happened, but it also does not require me to stay defined by it forever. Both things are true at the same time. I am 31 years old. I am a nurse. I work with people on some of the worst days of their lives, and I bring to that work every single thing I survived. The blue diary is gone now. My mother gave it back to me, and I burned it in my backyard on a cold October evening, and I watched 17 years of held breath turn into smoke and disappear into the sky. Page 47 no longer belongs to the silence. It belongs to me, and I decide what happens to it now. If this story moved you, please subscribe to this channel. There are people out there who need to hear that survival is possible, and your subscription helps these voices reach them. Hit the button, turn on notifications, and stay with us. You never know whose life the next story might change.